This RealAg Radio podcast is brought to you by Intruvix 2 herbicide from FMC. With its fast-burning activity and long-lasting systemic action, Intruvix 2 herbicide delivers consistent pre-seed broadleaf control in cereals. It's fast and it lasts. See your local retailer today.
It's time for RealAg Radio on Rural Radio Channel 147 on Sirius XM. RealAg Radio and RealAgriculture.com is your home for insight and analysis of the issues that are impacting your farm business. Let's get real and get connected with RealAg Radio. Welcome to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. Shaun Haney, your host here on this Monday edition of the show. Thanks so much, everybody, for making RealAg Radio and Rural Radio 147 a big part of your work day. It is great to be with you here today, starting off the week. Lots happening here today. Of course, it's an inauguration day in the United States. Of course, a lot of Canada waiting to see what could happen in terms of trade and tariffs and things like that as we have Donald Trump back in the White House. Trump 2.0 is what many people refer to the administration as. The Bidens leave the White House for the last time as president and first lady. And here we go. We wait and anticipate and look forward to seeing what this means, not only for the United States and some domestic policies, international policies, and what some of the impact will be on Canada, as well as, of course, agriculture. And we'll have it all covered for you here at RealAgriculture.com and RealAg Radio. Today on the show, we got Peter P. Johnson here. We're going to discuss what we've been hearing as we've both been out speaking and talking to audiences across Canada and the U.S. So we'll talk about some of that kind of stuff. We're also going to talk a little bit about artificial intelligence and agronomy and making decisions. We had our email on Saturday was all about artificial intelligence. And got some interesting feedback on that from some people. They really enjoyed Kelvin and I's deep dive, or I guess look at AI and what some of the possibilities are, not just agronomics, but business from an agriculture perspective. And of course, we also had the agronomist from last week that was all about artificial intelligence. We have a poll at RealAgriculture.com as well that is up right now that you can vote in. And it's basically asking, okay, what do you want AI to do for you? And it's interesting. So you can go to RealAgriculture.com, just scroll down, and it's pretty resounding result at this point. And what I picked is actually winning quite considerably. You right away get a bit of an insight into what farmers don't like doing. And if I was thinking about implementing AI into my business, I would probably do it on the low-hanging fruit, the things either that are very monotonous or the things that I really don't enjoy doing. So it's really delegating. Right? If there's something in your business that you don't like to do, you either find somebody else to do it or something else to do it. In this case, the thing is an artificial intelligence robot or some sort of program. So go to RealAgriculture.com and you can vote. I won't spoil the result for you yet. We'll talk about it a little bit later on in the week. Also joining us today after Pete is done, we're going to be talking to Codie Nagy. He's with Sask Oilseeds. We're going to talk about the new Saskatchewan clubroot map that is out and some interesting findings there. Clubroot continues to expand its territory. Not only this is one of those diseases that if we could find some sort of genetic solution, that would be great. But in the meantime, we have some responsibilities as farmers to make sure that we're doing everything we possibly can to try to fend off the disease as much as possible. So there is that, and we'll talk about that clubroot map today on the program as well. Now, if you have any feedback on today's show, we'd love to hear from you. You can send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. You can also call the RealAg feedback line, 855-776-6147. Got some feedback for you from the audience. Let's have a look here. So, a couple things. So, got an email from Jan, who is the subject line was Danielle Smith reaction to counter tariffs. Well, a lot of Canada not very happy with Danielle Smith. A lot of commentary over the weekend. Some people saying Danielle Smith is in the right. Some people saying Danielle Smith and Alberta being selfish, need to be part of Team Canada. It was interesting. James Moore, was with Denton's, former MP. He's been on this show before to talk politics. We should have James back. Anyway, he talked about how he really thought it was a misstep by the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister, he cannot believe that they went forward with that press conference or a communique without having Alberta on side. Kind of felt that Prime Minister Trudeau was the one that was being divisive. Well, here's what Jan thinks. Thanks for your radio show with your panel yesterday. I wonder if Danielle Smith might be right about her stance in the counter tariffs on oil. If Justin is using this situation to finally be able to shut down the oil industry because that has been his direction ever since he took office, this explains why the two front-running candidates for the Liberal Party don't think a consumer carbon tax is needed anymore, so long as the oil industry gets destroyed before they are voted in. Just thought I'd share that with you because we can't underestimate what the real narrative is, and we can't chalk it up to them not knowing what they are doing. As long as there are divisions between the premiers, no one is looking at what the real goal is. The left will push their agenda to the bitter end regardless of what the people want. So that's Jan's opinion. But I have heard from others very strongly they believe that Alberta is thinking selfishly here. I provided my opinion on Friday and what I think about all of it. I encourage you to go back to Friday's show, the RealAg Issues panel, and download that episode of the RealAg Radio podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Another email here from Brad. Brad is referring now, he's from Manitoba. He's referring to some of the dairy programming that's out there. So he says, hey, can you get a dairy farmer on the program to explain to the rest of us how they use the $5 billion in market compensation for? What sales were lost with the last trade deal? Does not everybody understand what the dairy industry costs us? Everybody just goes along with supply management, the supply management hoax. Dairy farmers always say it works well and no one really questions it. Thanks for the email, Brad. What? Yeah. So just to counter, Brad, I think people do question it. I think there's lots of people questioning it. What was the market compensation money for? What it was for? A lot of it was actually for technology upgrades. Now, whether they used the market, what they gave up in market compensate or market loss due to those three trade deals, may have used that incident as a reason to provide the money for technology upgrades and trying to find more efficiencies. One of the criticisms here, I'll sort of shift a little bit, Brad. One of the questions that I have, and I should have asked Campbell this on Friday, Andrew Campbell, dairy farmer from Strathroy, when he was on the show on Friday. But one of the questions I would have is, the other countries are accusing Canada of not following through on giving up the market access, yet the compensation still happened. That's a question that isn't asked a lot. Now, the Canadian government and the dairy industry may disagree with that, but that's something we should be following up with, I think, here on the program. Let's take a break. When we come back, we've got Peter Reed Johnson right after this. It's now time on RealAg Radio for a product spotlight. Joined right now by Vaterstad's Director of Sales for Western Canada, Philip Korzak. What are some of the things that Vaterstad is up to here in 2025?
Really, we're focused on farm shows. Some people can negate the value of farm shows, but for us, it's very important to still be in front of our customers and our dealers.
What are some of the innovations and improvements that customers can look forward to, as we start to think about what some of that 2026 lineup looks like?
A couple of the few things that customers will definitely see is we've changed the tire size on our precision delivery tanks. We are bringing what we call an in-cab hub, a common connection point with our iPad displays, GPS receiver that will be easier and cleaner for the customer inside the cab to really clean those up. We will actually be bringing a new meter bottom to our tanks. Customers and dealers should look forward to that for model year 26 as well. We always encourage customers to go directly to our distributors, so that would be their local dealer. Obviously, our website is a great place to go, so vaterstad.com.
Co-op knows your community because we live here too. Our teams are your trusted partners with a range of expertise to help support your entire farm operation. And we're giving back. In the past 5 years, Co-op has invested over $1.1 billion in the prairies through building, upgrading, and expanding local facilities. And we've returned over $1.17 billion to Co-op members in the prairies. Co-op, we're all building something for the future. Here for your farm, here for your family. Learn more at coop.crs/farm.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. Well, it's Monday. We talk about agronomy on Mondays. Joining me, as per usual, is Peter Pete Johnson. Pete, how are we doing?
Yeah, I'm doing awesome. Thanks, Sean. Although, dang it, it's gotten cold in Ontario. I think out west as well. We're into, I don't know, are they calling this one an Arctic vortex, or I
A
have no
polar
idea. But
vortex.
polar.
The inauguration was today in DC, and I heard the use of polar vortex. So I guess that's and you know, what's interesting is that this is again we're reminded like today I'm in Guelph, Ontario. And I've got Toronto pulled up here, and it says -11. Now, that's a different -11. That -11 in Ontario is very cold, Pete.
Oh man, I'll tell you, it was -7, I think, on Saturday night, and Sheila and I went out on a date night, which is
Ooh,
awesome.
spicy.
Yeah, nice. Well, I didn't sleep at home hardly at all last week, Sean. So it was a nice evening out, and we walked to a restaurant, and it was -7, and the wind was just blowing strong at us. And it just felt like about -25. Oh
Yeah.
man, it felt cold. But it had rained all day, or at least for all morning, I should say. And so there was just a ton of humidity in the air. And you get -7 with lots of humidity and the wind blowing, and she is just nasty,
Brutal.
baby.
Well, in Saskatoon today, which is a much drier cold, it is with the wind chill -44 Celsius.
Yowza. Yeah, that's cold.
Yeah,
That's
I
cold.
actually think I'm going to pull it up here, but I actually think that Winnipeg is colder than that. No, -40. So yeah,
-40.
you know, perfect for ag days this week. For everybody going to Brandon, this is somebody had sent me a text this morning saying if the snow doesn't squeak walking into ag days, it's not really ag days. And there's be some snow squeaking at ag days here today. I'm glad that Mother Nature cooperated last week for crop production show in Saskatoon. It was balmy. I didn't even take a coat, Pete. I had no coat in Saskatoon for the week of crop production show. I'm glad it was, that was the weather last week and not this week's weather. I appreciate Mother Nature holding off.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I was in Winnipeg last week as well, and yeah, it was really nice and balmy. It was +4 one day, maybe, and +0 the other day. It was pretty sweet, right? Brandon, Winnipeg, like Manitoba was just nice. And then we got out on Thursday night, and about 2 or 3 hours after the plane took off, that Alberta Clipper just nailed Winnipeg. Man, I was glad we got out.
Seems to be the thing to do lately. Blame Alberta for stuff. Hey, maximize productivity and profitability with an innovative all-in-one approach to farming. Combining accounting, business planning, agronomic field planning, and advanced technology, MNP Ag Intellect delivers personalized solutions that empower you to make confident, data-driven decisions. All you got to do is go to mnp.ca to find out more. Pete, who were you speaking to last week in Manitoba?
So actually, I was with Mazex. And we did,
cool.
three meetings, 2 silage, 1 grain corn, and it was just a ton of fun.
Nice.
They're really more and more corn out there, and more opportunity for yield, and trying to figure out how that works. And yeah, it was an absolute blast.
Now I'm sure you ran into some Wheat Pete Word fans.
Yeah, well, absolutely. There's a few people there that mentioned, and the one speaker actually from Precision Farming, right? The planter guys. Actually said, "Wow," he met me and he said, "You're one of my idols." And I'm going, "Oh my gosh, like get over it." Not
Nice.
quite that level, but a ton of fun.
Well, a little birdie told me that you have also fans at the University of Guelph, that there are a group of students. Now, I don't know if I was this kind of a student. In fact, I know I wasn't. But there are a group of students at the University of Guelph who get together weekly when a new episode of Wheat Pete's Word drops. That's every Wednesday. And they get together as a group, listen to the episode, drink some beer, and then discuss it. Is this true?
Well, so I mean, it's secondhand information, but that was Doug talked to me on Friday at the Midwestern Ag Conference. His son is at the University of Guelph in crop science, and said that that's what they do. So it's absolutely cool. I assume he's got accurate information, and I'm just going like, wowzers. That if I can stimulate that level of discussion and thought process. That is what my entire career has been about, Shaun. I just like to make people think things through. I actually had the opportunity to present to the Soil and Crop Club at the University of Guelph on Monday night last week, and we talked tillage. And it was just so much fun because there was a group of students in the back corner who clearly liked tillage, right? They kind of like, let the black smoke pour, baby. If she's not pouring black smoke, stick her in the ground deeper, make her pour. and and so when we walked through the whole discussion around what are you doing down deep, what are you trying to do, and use your critical thinking skills. It was just fun, and I could really tell that they were thinking and trying to process and put that into their own operations. And man, that's what education is all about.
Well, listening to you makes me want to drink too.
Geez, thanks, Shaun.
That was too easy. That was too easy. Hey, last week on The Agronomist, and actually tonight on The Agronomist, it's all about phosphorus. Okay, so 8 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Central, that's also 7 o'clock in Saskatchewan, everybody, or 6 o'clock Mountain Time, for those of you Colorado through Alberta. Agronomist, and it's a live show. You can get CCA, CEU credits. It's on YouTube. Also, you can find it at realagriculture.com/live. Lindsay's got two great experts tonight, and they're talking about phosphorus. But last week, they talked about artificial intelligence in agronomy. And, with our Saturday special emailer, we focused on agronomy and AI and got some really good feedback from the audience about what the potential is and what the opportunities are. But it does kind of spur your thoughts on what the future could hold and how this could be a real tool to help us make maybe not all the right decisions, but maybe increase the probability of making better decisions.
Yeah, 100%, Shaun. And actually, it was one of the questions that they asked the production pundits at the Southwest Ag Conference a couple of weeks ago. And from an agronomic standpoint, you kind of say, well, how can AI help drive that process further? And can it replace the agronomists? And I think you and I might have even chatted about that. I still think you need boots on the ground, but there's been lots of discussion this winter about it. And Scott Shearer actually talked about it at the Midwestern Ag Conference on Friday. And his opening statement, I guess, was that AI is a watershed event in agriculture.
Watershed?
Yes,
wow.
Watershed.
Okay.
So this is a different perception than a lot of other people. But he used this analogy, and I just love it. So he has access to a lot of the data from John Deere Operations Center, and he was able to get the data from all of the new 8R, 8RX, 9RX tractors across the United States. And I think, don't quote me on this, but I think he said that was about 2,500 of those tractors. And so for last year, on average, those 2,500 tractors put on 298 hours. Now think about that, 298 hours. They have a life expectancy of 20,000 hours. So that's just, I don't know, it's not even 10%, right, of what they're well, actually closer to 1%, right? 20,000 hours, and they got 300. So we're like just a fraction. It's going to take 60 years or 68 years was the calculation, I think, before their life expectancy runs out. And by the way, the other interesting thing is that they spent 8 to 10% of their time on a highway, and they spent 31 to 32% of their time idling. So we only were in the field working 60% of the time. 40% of the time we were either moving or just idling in the field. So really incredible insights. But his comment was, you don't get rid of your cell phone or your iPad because it quits working. You get rid of your cell phone or your iPad because it becomes obsolete.
Right.
And the chances of these tractors becoming obsolete as we get more and more technology, as we go to autonomous tractors. Like, they may never reach their 20,000 year or 20,000 hour rather life expectancy, because they're going to become obsolete and we're going to replace them with something else.
Yeah, but with okay, so I understand this comparison, but I'll tell you what. Well, a lot of the issues with phones, it's called planned obsolete. It's where I would keep the phone. I like the phone, but because of all the software updates, my phone now won't function, forcing me to get a new phone, which is not a cheap endeavor nowadays. Now, a tractor, way more than a phone. Heaven forbid if we get to a situation where, because of the software and because of these intelligence, we can't do the retrofitting. Heaven forbid if I was forced to have to buy a new tractor because of that, like a cell phone. That comparison can work both ways, Pete.
Yeah, absolutely. I get that. But on the other hand, how much can they update the tractors? And do we go as things move forward? Another thing that was presented that day was around pinch rows and corn yields. And so they did a great project where they actually put great big tires on the CCS cart that was carrying the 18-row corn planter. And they were able to get the pressure in those tires down to about 15 PSI.
Wow.
I think that was the number, like really quite reasonable. And they planted the corn right into where those tires drove.
Yeah.
And they compared that to another unit where they use the standard frame. The tires go between the corn rows and have to have 80 PSI in them to carry the load. And they got an 8 bushel per acre yield increase where they planted into the low pressure tires and not having the pinch row compaction. Now, that's a 1-year study. Other people have done that. But 8 bushel over 3,000 or 4,000 or 6,000 acres, you get a big planter like that, it can cover a lot of territory.
Yeah.
And so that gets to be a significant thing. And so it's this thought process of, are we actually going to go to fleets of autonomous small tractors, in which case that 9RX is never going to see anywhere close to its 20,000 hour life cycle, right? And so that was sort of his concept is, yeah, the phones are planned obsolescence. I get that. We can't upgrade them anymore.
That's the word. That's planned obsolescence. Thank you. That's the right phrase.
Yeah. But man, these tractors, even though we didn't plan them for obsolescence, as we move more and more into the world of AI, they may become obsolete because of the advancements we make in that field. And I don't know. I thought it was a really cool thought process. I still don't think it's going to take me out of a job as an agronomist. No. I still think that and maybe that's just because I don't want to realize that I'm a dinosaur, but I'm getting almost old enough to be a dinosaur.
I hope I don't get replaced as a radio show host. We'll say that. Hey, calling all Montana, Dakota, and northern Minnesota growers. The new seed omega-3 canola production system can help you unlock a guaranteed path to market with attractive premium opportunities. Also, first-in-class agronomy support and free on-farm pickup after harvest. Oh, that seems like it would be so nice. All you have to do is go visit omega3canola.com. That is the new seed omega-3 canola production system. It is for growers in Montana, North South Dakota, and northern Minnesota. omega3canola.com. We've got more with Peter E. Pete Johnson here on Agronomic Monday right after this. Looking for proven performance in wheat? Lima Grain Cereal Seeds has you covered. With locally adapted varieties bred across key growing regions, LCS delivers top-tier genetics for winter and spring wheat. In 2024, LCS farmers swept 12 national wheat yield contest categories and won the Bin Buster Award for the 4th straight year. Learn more by going to limagraincerealseeds.com. Time to get caught up with what's going on over there at Genesis Fertilizers. Joining us right now is Terry Drabiak. There's a lot of concern right now about the stickiness of fertilizer prices and some of the volatility that's out there in the market. This is, a pathway, an opportunity to have a farmer-owned solution, or at least a part of the game.
We're building one plant, and we're building one plant for farmers. And what those two attributes bring is a security of their fertilizer. Whatever happens around the world or even back home, they'll have a secure fertilizer for their farm, and the profit stays here in Canada. Farmers are critical to this project. We call it a closed loop system, and what that means is that the people who own the plant are also the people who will take product from the plant, and that's so critical in many ways in terms of bankability, in terms of security of their supply. It's a really good model.
And make sure you go to genesisfertilizers.com for more information. And welcome back to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. Shaun Haney, your host, joined by Peter Pete Johnson here on this Monday. Looking forward to the football game tonight. Notre Dame and Ohio State. I know it's inauguration. Everyone's all political today. But I'm here for the football, baby. It is the final for the college football playoff. The whole season of dedication, of following what's going on. It all culminates tonight in the big game. Hard to bet against Ohio State, although I am cheering for Notre Dame because Ohio State, I just not a fan. Pete, speaking of Ohio State, you were listening last week to a presentation, or maybe it was a couple weeks ago, to a presentation with Scott Shear, who's from Ohio State. So there's some good Buckeyes out there. And he was talking about some AI and agronomy stuff. Did we cover all that already, or did he have more on that?
Oh, so I think we covered a lot of it, but he also, just in terms of the amount of information that is out there and how much more efficient AI can be in terms of pulling all that information together and distilling it down into something usable for people. So he did a Google Scholar search on nitrogen trials on corn. And in 0.13 seconds, Google Scholar came back with 1.69 million research studies on nitrogen rates in corn. And then he compared that to the current nitrogen recommendations in the U.S. And they basically look at yield and the price of corn. And so there's two factors, and they make their recommendations based off that. And his comment was, man, there's so much more to it than that. And at some point, we've got to be able to get better at predicting the right nitrogen rate. And their recommendations right now are the best they can do. But if there's 1.69 million trials and AI can actually pull that data together, we're going to get better nitrogen recommendations. We are going to move that bar forward. And by the way, Shaun, nitrogen, my entire career, has been the most elusive nutrient. They're going to talk phosphorus tonight on the agronomist. That's going to be cool. I'll be in the chat. But phosphorus is so much easier, and it's really complex, but it's so much easier than nitrogen. Go way back to when I first started, and Steve Hawkins was a researcher from Purdue State University at that particular time, and we had him up to speak, and he said, yep, doing research on nitrogen is like counting a stampede of wild horses after dark.
After dark, without a flashlight.
Yeah, it's impossible. It's just so complex, but we'll figure it out. And so that was another one of those things where Scott just thought that there's so much more we can do. And he also, by the way, talked about yield monitors and about, trying to get on-farm data. There was some really cool stuff there. We had some great arguments after, because all these blocks that people put in the field, and they use these blocks within a yield zone in the field, but it takes 12 seconds for the crop to go from the header to the yield monitor. And that's 12 seconds from basically the center of the header. If you got a 50-foot header or 40-foot header, there's some seconds to get the stuff from the outside to the center. Anyway, 12 seconds is what that takes. And he says, when you look at the data, the eFields program in Ohio is really cool. They get farmers to do trials, side-by-side trials in the field or these block trials. But they say that in order to have faith in the data, that the strips have to be a minimum of 1,000 feet long.
Okay.
And all these blocks people put in the field are sometimes 100 feet, 150 feet. The long ones are 250 feet.
Yeah.
The eFields, they say, if they're not 1,000 feet long, we just can't have faith in the data. He also showed I've always been a little suspect of yield monitors because we've just done some of this work as well, but he's actually done the research work, and the difference in the yield that you get if you go uphill versus if you go downhill is can sometimes be as much as 20, 30, 40% difference in yield.
Haven't some of the new combines adjusted? Don't they have leveling to compensate for some of that or not?
So on the yield monitor, no.
Okay.
There are some yield monitors that will calibrate on the go, but I haven't seen the actual research to say how effective that is. But remember, Shaun, as long as it's an impact plate, and almost all yield monitors are impact plates, the moisture content makes a big difference, because if you have higher moisture, then the first kernels that hit almost act like a sponge, or they absorb some of the impact of the kernels behind it, versus if they're dry, you get all that impact going through. And again, you go uphill, well, the angle at which the crop hits the impact plate changes versus if you go downhill. And Scott actually said, which I still am trying to get my brain around this one, but he said, the combines, the clean grain elevator throws the crop into the bin and into a sump before the bubble auger puts it up into the middle of the bin, right? He says it makes a difference if the sump is empty or the sump is full in the level of impact that you get and the yield that monitor says that it's actually giving you. And also how much draw is on the combine. If it slows down because you're in really heavy crop, that changes the impact. Yield monitors are great, but just be really careful if you are running these small blocks in the field and you're using that data. It can be quite incorrect if there's short blocks and one is going uphill and the other is one beside is going downhill. Man, the data can be all over the place.
That's super fascinating. Hey, Pete, I want to tell you about Alpine Liquid Fertilizers. They're your full season crop fertility specialists from start to finish. Make sure you check out their website. Also, if you're in the U.S., think of Nature's, okay? Nature's Alpine, I should say. Hey, Pete, speaking of 1,000 feet and doing the right tests and trials and things like that to get accurate information, last week in Saskatoon at Crop Production Show, spoke to a couple different audiences, and I went through some of the things that we've been talking about here in the past number of weeks, like cost cutting. Where's the cost cutting happening in Canada and the U.S.? And one of the things that after speaking to the crowd and getting questions and talking around it, is I kind of more than ever really thinking about the growers that over a longer period of time have been committed to on-farm field testing and knowing how products perform on their farm specifically. It makes in a year like this where we're trying to figure out what gets me a return and what doesn't, what should I, what can I pull off the table from a use standpoint that won't cost me yield and cost me a ROI, those people have an advantage. Because what I'm picking up from the audience, and we've discussed this a little bit before, but what I'm picking up is when I say farmers are going to cut back on product category XYZ, that's not across the board, and it shouldn't be across the board. If that stabilizer on nitrogen is working for you, then stick with it. Why cut it? But what I'm finding out from growers and the feedback is a lot of growers don't know. They look at the yield and the return in aggregate of what they've done, not necessarily by specific product. And so I think that's something to be aware of for the future as we think about some of our on-farm field testing.
Oh yeah, 100%, Shaun. And not all fields are the same. And
Correct,
so,
yeah.
right, if you're a 100-acre farmer and you have basically the same soil type on your entire farm, which is pretty rare, then you maybe don't need to worry as much because you'll have that sense. But man, if you are farming several thousand acres across 5, 6, 8 different soil types, even your nitrogen stabilizer on your urea or on your 28%, in your 28%, like it can work totally differently on the clay soils than it does on the silt loam soils. And so by doing that, by doing those trials on different fields over time, you can soon figure out that, yeah, on this field, I can reduce my phosphorus fertilizer this year because I have good soil tests and I have really good root growth on that farm, and I don't need phosphorus there this year, or I need a very little amount of phosphorus this year. Whereas on that heavy clay soil or on that blow sand, man, if I cut back phosphorus rates there, it's going to hurt me hardcore. Or if I don't use the nitrogen stabilizer or whatever. And I think you're 100% right. People who do those on-farm trials, but again, remember they've got to be done well. And so these yield monitor comments I made earlier come into play. But if they're done well, and if you have a number of years of doing them, you can make way better decisions.
Well, and if you don't have the data specifically for your farm, this is where you push your agronomist. Like, okay, what have you, agronomist, what have you been seeing across your client load?
Yeah.
Right. Use that kind of data in aggregate to your advantage.
That's why you send Pete an email and say, hey, here's my situation. What do you think?
Yeah. No, absolutely. Hey, we're going to take a break. We've got more RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147 coming up right after this.
What's next doesn't happen by accident, doesn't happen by chance.
What's next happens when experience meets expertise, when data meets dollars, and when steel meets earth.
What's next happens when the promising work of Pioneer's state-of-the-art research centers meets the unsparing challenges of more than 17,000 on-farm trials.
Our ultimate goal is to bring the next seed breakthrough to your field.
Because Pioneer isn't just our name.
It's our mission. Pioneer.
What's next
happens here.
I'm Lindsay Smith from RealAgriculture.com. Join me Monday nights for The Agronomist, a 1-hour live and interactive show broadcast across YouTube, Facebook, and X. Monday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, I host expert agronomists from all over the country to give you answers to some of the toughest agronomic questions. Join us live or catch the replay Tuesday morning. That's The Agronomist with me, Lindsay Smith, Monday nights live at 8 p.m. Eastern.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio, Rural Radio 147, here on Agronomic Monday. Shaun Haney, your host. Hey, Vaterstat is partnering with Canadian farmers for outstanding emergence. Their line of tillage, seeding, and planting equipment offers solutions for all soil types. Also, tons of different field conditions, tillage practices, really helping to maximize yield. To learn more and to find your local dealer, you can visit vaterstad.com. As I mentioned, Shaun Haney, your host, joined by Peter Pete Johnson. Pete, it's interesting. We're at that time of the year where we get the updates from StatsCan, we get the updates from USDA, and as we're already thinking about next year, we're still trying to wrap up last year's marketing, and we get a little bit of a clearer picture on what yields were, or in some cases, what they weren't. And I know a lot of growers in the U.S. very upset with USDA, or questioning USDA when they did the big adjustment a couple Fridays ago on the corn yield. If you look at Western Canada, a lot of farmers were very disappointed with, say, their canola yields, still thinking maybe there's 1 million metric ton to come off of the StatsCan number. I don't know how many emails and texts I have had from growers saying the canola number in Western Canada is closer to 17 million metric tons than StatsCan wants to believe. I don't know if it's that low, but boy, there's a lot of people out there that believe that narrative. And we kind of have that same sort of disagreement happening in Ontario with some of the corn yield data.
Yeah, absolutely. And Shaun, I just want to say before I get there that thanks to USDA for that gift that they gave us that on the Friday report, because markets went up significantly at that point.
Well, yeah, if you're still holding old inventory, but if you had sold your inventory like 2 months ago, boy, you're like, thanks USDA, I really appreciate that.
Yeah, but then you have new crop to sell, Shaun. So from that perspective, it was a gift, even if you had all your old crop sold. And for the people that didn't have all their old crop sold, sometimes you get a gift. You should maybe cash some of it in. I'm not a marketer, so probably, yeah. But anyway.
Procrastination pays off again.
Yeah. Right. Anyway, so we do have the numbers both from StatsCan and also from the Agricor here in Ontario. And man, the corn yields are widely differed. So StatsCan is saying 180 bushel per acre corn. Agricor is saying 198.8 bushels per acre. So that's a 10% yield difference, right? Like that's a big difference in actual yield. StatsCan, one thing about them is that they are consistent in how they survey farmers, but it's disappointing when we get those big differences because it really does make you scratch your head as to how they can be that far apart.
Yeah.
And which number is right. But on soybeans, they're a lot closer. StatsCan is at 51.8, and Agricor is at 53.4. So, we're just about a bushel and a half apart. So that's sort of in the game. But really interesting numbers. I mean, you look at some of the county averages and here in Ontario, and what a huge difference rainfall makes. We all know that. But you can take areas like Haldimand County, and I saw the numbers for Haldimand County. They were at 126% of their average farm yield from Agricor. So, that's like a crop and a quarter in 1 year. And that's because they had perfect rainfall. They're a heavy clay soil. You go to Lambton County, also a heavy clay soil. But in Lambton County, they didn't have a perfect rainfall. They had way too much rainfall all the way through, and they're at 94% of their average farm yield.
Wow.
And so, overall, it's the soybean yield, according to Agricor, is kind of right up there with the record. And I'm not sure which year is the record, but that 53.4, 53.5, that's been in the game, but it's been in the game maybe 4 of the last 5 years, Shaun. Like, it's really interesting how that provincial average has stuck up there. Corn, on the other hand, we're off the record for sure.
Yeah, I really hope that you were talking about artificial intelligence earlier. I just hope that we're able to figure out a way to use some of the technology to be able to improve some of our, human survey work that we are doing, whether it's in the U.S., Western Canada, or Eastern Canada. Do I think that some of these statistical agencies have, where they purposely come out with a number like a lot of people are accusing USDA of? I don't. I kind of don't. I think we're giving USDA too much credit that they would be that strategic. For sure. Has it been inaccurate? Yeah. Should it be more accurate? Probably. Now, as farmers, though, we know our fields really well, and we miscalculate yield. So we're not exactly super accurate either, right? It just shows you, and I think, depending on the crop type, like if you're looking at a field pea crop, that's different than being able to calculate a corn. Like corn should be one of the ones we're probably the most accurate on because we have some mathematical equations that go with it, but it still proves to be very difficult. Well, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, no, the reason, Shaun, think about it. I walk into my cornfield and I'm going to do a yield estimate, and I stop at 3 spots in the field and I take the 5th, the 11th, and the 18th cob or whatever those numbers are. Well, man, like, did I walk in a good spot of the field? Did I walk in a poor spot of the field? Like, in actual fact, remote sensing should be able to help us out there. as long as it isn't full of weeds, you should be able to look at the color of that crop canopy and get a better sense on, is it, what the crop looks like. And then at least if I walk into the field, I know if I'm walking into a poor spot or a good spot. And I had one grower in particular. He was on the yield tour. They came to his farm and they estimated his yield, and I think they estimated it at 195 or something like that. His actual yield turned out to be something crazy like 260 bushels per acre.
Wow. That's a big difference.
Right. And he said, how can they be so wrong? Well, again, they opened up 3 cobs in 3 spots or 5 spots in the field, and man.
Yeah, but I took introductory statistics. Even I know if I just look at 5 cobs, that's not telling me anything.
Well, how else are you going to do it, though?
Well, shouldn't you have to look? Okay, so don't you assume normal distribution? You should have to look at over 30 cobs.
So when you go into the field, I believe they're stopping at 5 locations. They're doing plant counts, and they open 3 cobs. And the same 3 cobs. So they count the 17 feet, 5 inches of row in 30-inch rows.
Yeah.
And they say there's 35,000 plants here. So the population is 35,000. And then they open cob, whatever it is, 3, 8, and 11, or I can't remember the cob numbers, but they do that every time. So they look at 15.
That's 15.
Cobs.
Still not 30.
Yeah. So the problem is, how much time do you spend? Right?
Well, yeah, but the numbers are like, okay, I'm surprised. I thought they would be looking at more. Okay. Pete, interesting. If anybody has any theories or thoughts on how we predict yield, especially from the agency perspective, I know farmers are pretty passionate about this. And hey, the farmers that always tell when they get the phone call, the survey phone call, and they tell them the wrong yield, not helping. You're not helping this anyway.
But if I tell them a low yield, the price might go up.
Well, they tend to throw some of those outliers out. I'm sure. Hey, Pete, have yourself a great week.
Yeah, you as well, Shaun. Have fun. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay, when we come back here on RealAg Radio, here on this Monday, we're going to hear from Codie Nagy. Now, he is with Sask Oilseeds, and we're going to talk about that new clubroot map they have out for the province of Saskatchewan right after this. RealAg Radio is Canada's only daily radio show focused on agriculture. Get expert advice on Agronomic Monday. Tuesdays and Wednesdays will cover a broad range of issues. Thursday we'll hear from farmers across the country on the Farmer Rapid Fire. And we'll wrap things up Fridays with the RealAg Issues panel with Kelvin Hefner and Lindsay Smith. Join us Monday through Friday at 4:30 Eastern. And don't forget about the replay at 7 in the morning on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM.
FP Genetics brings new seed genetics to Canadian farms, empowering growers to thrive in ever-changing conditions. We are committed to helping farmers thrive with superior genetics, developing customer strategies to build best practices, all tailored to individual needs. Visit fpgenetics.ca to discover FP's dynamic portfolio of wheat, durum, barley, oats, peas, and rye, and to contact your local territory manager. FP Genetics. Gain a genetic advantage, experience the next wave.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. Hey, for every acre, every row, every seed, precision wins every time. Only Seedmaster delivers unmatched accuracy for better yields and better profits. Seedmaster, driven by precision, leading the way in seeding innovation. You nailed it. Okay, we got a new clubroot map out for the province of Saskatchewan. And clubroot, obviously, a disease that has created some problems for canola growers, obviously in Alberta, but Saskatchewan too. And I had a chance to catch up with Codie Nagy from Sask Oilseeds to get an update on the map and some of the best practices that they are recommending for the 2025 crop year. Okay, so what does this map show in comparison to some past years?
It would show one new RM where the clubroot pathogen has been found. It was found through DNA testing in 2 separate fields within that same RM.
And I guess, does that create, was that expected, or does this create an increased level of caution? What's kind of the reaction to this data?
I would say in this particular case, it was expected. The RM is 439, so it's west of North Battleford, which is already a clubroot area. It's just this particular RM hadn't had anything found in it until this year, but all of the surrounding RMs have had it in the past, so it was, I guess, somewhat expected.
And you're looking at, I think, more than 480 fields across the province that are a part of this program.
Yeah, there's 480 samples submitted for testing.
And who runs the program? Is it Sask Oilseeds? Is it something done by the province of Saskatchewan, or is it in tandem? Talk about that.
It's done in tandem. So Sask Oilseeds administers it in conjunction with Sask, or the government of Saskatchewan.
And from a best management practice standpoint, what are some of the things that growers need to be thinking about based on some of this information that you found in this year's testing?
Well, first and foremost, just be aware of the area that you're in. If you're moving from a high clubroot area to an area that doesn't have clubroot, just be mindful of how dirty your machinery is. I know it's a pain to wash all the dirt off machines, but if you're coming from a clubroot area to an area with nothing, it might be a good idea to clean it as best you can, and also use the most updated genetics possible. Clubroot is always evolving and overcoming resistance, so be sure that you're staying on top of the new genetics.
Yeah, make sure you talk to your local seed dealer when you're purchasing those canola hybrids, and ask questions about the strain clubroot protection and what that looks like. Try to dig a little bit deeper than just, hey, do we have clubroot protection or not? Like, try to really spend some time on it, because it's important, especially if you're in those heavily infected areas.
Correct. Yes. Just because the bag says clubroot resistant doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be effective on the particular clubroot that you have. You would have to do a little bit more digging.
If somebody wants more information on some of the results, maybe look at the map themselves, do they find it at the Sask Oilseeds website, or where do they go?
Yeah, you go to the Sask Oilseeds website or Saskatchewan government website. Sask Ag, it has it on there as well.
Okay, great stuff. Well, hey, Codie, really appreciate you joining us here today. All the best.
Awesome. Thanks, Shaun.
That was great to hear there from Codie Nagy of Sask Oilseeds. This appearance by Sask Oilseeds is brought to you by Alliance Seed, introducing CDC Envy CWRS with impressive yields, early maturity, outstanding standability, and robust disease package. With CDC Envy, your wheat crop it'll just be the talk of the town. Learn more at allianceseed.com, or you can call 877-279-2890. That is Alliance Seeds. Lots happening this week in Canada, of course, in the United States with inauguration today. Obviously, as people are watching and following very, very closely what could happen with the application of tariffs. It sounds, again, based on the executive orders that are to be signed, is that there's going to be an investigation into trade practices by Canada, Mexico, and China, for example. So tariffs potentially not happening today, but that doesn't mean that investigation doesn't last 24 hours and we don't have them tomorrow or by the end of the week. We will watch very closely here at RealAgriculture.com and RealAg Radio, and we'll have all of it as the news develops. Tomorrow on the show, we got a fun one. I'm in Guelph recording the show here today, but we're going to be with Baker Tilly, and we're going to be doing a show from their event. Looking forward to that. And of course, we have the Farm Rapid Fire, RealAg Issues panel, and a whole bunch of stuff to chat about as the week develops. If you have any feedback, send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. You can also call us on the RealAg feedback line, 855-776-6147. Thanks, everybody, for getting real and getting connected with RealAg Radio. We'll, of course, chat again tomorrow. Cheers, everybody.
Thank you for downloading this RealAg Radio podcast, brought to you by Intruvix 2 Herbicide from FMC. Intruvix 2 Herbicide for cereals delivers outstanding pre-seed control of the toughest broadleaf weeds like kochia, volunteer canola, and narrow-leaved hawksbeard. See your local retailer today.